What happens to a nation when its people still use the same words, but no longer agree about what those words mean? Liberty, justice, rights, equality, truth, virtue. For generations, these words shaped America's public vocabulary. They appeared in sermons, school books, courtrooms, newspapers, constitutions, and family conversations. But words are more than sounds. They carry ideas. Ideas carry assumptions. And assumptions eventually shape laws, institutions, and nations. So, what happens when the vocabulary remains, but the foundation underneath it changes? Nearly 2.5 centuries ago, one American scholar became convinced that the survival of the young republic would depend, in part, on something most people would never consider a weapon of national preservation: a dictionary. His name was Noah Webster. And Webster believed that if America was going to remain free, Americans would need more than a constitution. They would need a common language through which they could understand it. The American Revolution ended British political rule, but independence created a new problem. What did it mean to become American? The new nation had declared independence from Britain, but American classrooms were still filled with British books. Americans spoke English, read English authors, followed English spelling, and inherited an educational system from the culture they had just fought to leave. Noah Webster believed political independence required something more: cultural independence, educational independence, and eventually linguistic independence. In 1783, as the Revolutionary War was ending, Webster published the first part of what became his enormously influential American spelling books. But spelling was only the beginning. Webster saw education as nation building. In his 1788 essay on the education of youth in America, he argued that early impressions help form individual character, and individual character eventually becomes national character. To Webster, the classroom was not separate from the Republic. It was where the Republic's future citizens were being formed. Webster understood something deceptively simple. Language is not merely how we communicate ideas. Language helps preserve ideas. When Webster published his monumental American Dictionary of the English Language in 1828, he explained why an American dictionary was necessary. American institutions, government, laws, and political structures were different from Britain's. Words such as Senate, Congress, Court, and Assembly existed in Britain, but in the United States, they described institutions that functioned differently. A British dictionary could define the word. Webster believed Americans needed definitions capable of expressing American realities. Then he made an observation that reaches beyond spelling. Language, Webster wrote, is the expression of ideas. And when ideas change, the meaning attached to language can change with them. That raises an uncomfortable question. Can a constitution remain stable if the population interpreting it no longer shares basic assumptions about liberty, justice, rights, duty, morality, and law? Webster believed definitions mattered because ideas mattered. And ideas mattered because nations are governed not simply by documents, but by human beings interpreting those documents. This is where Noah Webster becomes more controversial to the modern ear. Webster did not believe education could be morally neutral, nor did he believe Republican government could survive indefinitely without moral formation. His educational writings repeatedly connected citizenship with character, and Webster's worldview was unmistakably Christian. In the preface to his 1828 dictionary, Webster described the early United States as possessing civilization, learning, science, constitutions of free government, and what he called the Christian religion. His dictionary frequently used biblical passages and concepts to illustrate definitions. This was not accidental. For Webster, Scripture was not merely private devotion. He regarded Christianity as a source of moral instruction capable of shaping the character necessary for free government. But the historical picture is more interesting than a slogan. In his 1788 essay on education, Webster criticized the careless use of the entire Bible as an ordinary classroom reader. He feared constant mechanical repetition could diminish its spiritual impact. He did not want Scripture discarded. He wanted it treated seriously. He argued that selected biblical history and morality could be used to great advantage, and he wanted the Bible used as a system of religion and morality. That distinction matters. Webster's concern was not simply that children encounter biblical words. He wanted them to understand the moral ideas behind them. We often speak about liberty as though it means the absence of restraint, but a free society presents a paradox. The more freedom individuals possess, the more self-government they must exercise. A society in which no one governs himself eventually demands that someone govern everyone. The American constitutional system was designed around divided power, competing institutions, representation, law, and limits on government. But parchment cannot make people virtuous. A constitution can restrain institutions. It cannot manufacture character. Webster understood that problem. If citizens were going to govern themselves politically, he believed they had to learn to govern themselves morally. That is why education mattered so much to him. The question was never merely, can the child read? The deeper question was, what kind of citizen is being formed? Because eventually that child becomes a voter, a juror, a teacher, a legislator, a judge, a parent, a leader, a citizen entrusted with liberty. And this brings Webster's project directly into the 21st century. Every major political argument eventually becomes an argument about definitions. What is equality? What is justice? What is a right? What is freedom? What is discrimination? What is tolerance? What is truth? Two people can use the same word while carrying completely different ideas inside it. Once the definition changes, the argument changes. The law may change. The institution may change. Eventually, the culture may change. This does not mean definitions can never develop. Language naturally changes. Webster himself changed American English. The warning is different. When foundational political and moral words become detached from any shared standard, public debate becomes increasingly difficult. We may still speak the same language grammatically while no longer speaking the same language morally. And when there is no agreement about what liberty means, whoever possesses enough cultural, political, judicial, technological, or economic power can increasingly determine the definition. That is the danger, not simply losing a word. Losing the boundaries of the idea the word once represented. 5 years after publishing his great dictionary, Webster undertook another extraordinary project. In 1833, he published his own revision of the King James Bible. He was not attempting to create a new theology. He largely retained the translation while updating language and grammar he believed had become difficult or inappropriate for contemporary readers. The project reveals something important. Language and scripture were connected in Webster's mind. He wanted people to understand the words, because if the words became unintelligible, the ideas behind them could become inaccessible. In the preface to that Bible, Webster described Scripture as a chief moral influence for good in human society and as a guide for human conduct. Whether modern Americans agree with Webster or not, we should understand what he was attempting. He was not merely defining American words. He was trying to preserve a moral vocabulary, and he believed that vocabulary was connected to the ability of a free people to govern themselves. Historical honesty is essential. Noah Webster was not the sole architect of the American Republic. The founders were not identical in theology. Their beliefs ranged across a spectrum, and the Constitution did not make membership in a Christian church a qualification for citizenship. The First Amendment protected religious exercise while forbidding a federal establishment of religion. So the argument is not that Noah Webster secretly wrote Christianity into the Constitution. He did not. His influence operated somewhere deeper. Culture, education, language, moral formation. Webster represents a generation that often assumed ideas about virtue, duty, providence, moral accountability, and human nature that many modern Americans no longer automatically assume. That difference matters when we read old documents. We may recognize every word on the page while bringing very different definitions and assumptions to those words. The real historical question is therefore not simply, was America founded as a Christian nation? The more revealing question may be, what moral assumptions did early Americans believe were necessary for Republican government? And what happens when those assumptions disappear? America is now conducting an enormous cultural experiment. Can the political vocabulary of an earlier moral world survive after much of that moral world has disappeared? Can liberty survive when liberty no longer has an agreed definition? Can rights survive when there is no agreement about their source? Can justice survive if justice is whatever the strongest institution says it is? Can constitutional government survive when citizens increasingly view opponents not simply as wrong, but as illegitimate? These questions extend beyond Christianity. Every civilization depends upon some understanding of human nature, right and wrong, authority, obligation, and the purpose of government. No society operates without foundational beliefs. The question is never whether a culture will have a moral framework. The question is which framework will prevail. Noah Webster had an answer. He believed the moral teachings of Christianity supplied the foundation best suited to preserving liberty. Modern America increasingly offers competing answers, And the struggle between those answers may determine the future meaning of the words engraved into our national identity. Perhaps that is why Noah Webster deserves another look. Not because every definition he wrote must govern the 21st century. Not because language should be frozen in 1828.